Joe Biden has asked for additional funding in order to assist Ukrainians following the invasion of Russia into their country. Now, this is important to do because of the fact that the US had made promises to Ukraine after Ukraine signed a bunch of treaties and agreed to give up its nuclear weapons. So for those of you who are like, why does the United States even have to be involved in this at all? Why do they have to help the Ukrainians at all? There is a promise made, and it's because of the fact that Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons. So what is Biden doing aside from implementing some sanctions? Well, he has asked Congress to authorize additional funding to assist the Ukrainians. So the White House on Wednesday formally asked Congress to authorize an additional $10 billion in humanitarian, economic, and security assistance for Ukraine and allies in Central Europe to respond to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, I say additional $10 billion because he had already asked Congress to authorize 22.5 billion. So this would be another 10 billion on top of that, okay? So $32.5 billion ain't nothing to mess with. That is a lot of money, and that is quite a bit of assistance to Ukraine. So while I understand the frustration some of the politicians there are feeling as a result of the US refusing to implement a no-fly zone, a no-fly zone would escalate the war, no questions asked about that. And the US is helping in every way that it can. I think that there could be additional sanctions that would hit Russian oil, of course. I would like to see the Biden administration focus more on those targeted sanctions. But in terms of funding and military aid, it's unquestionable that the US has been helping. It asks for $4.8 billion for the Pentagon to support US troop deployments to NATO countries and to provide additional military equipment to Ukraine, and $5 billion for the State Department and the US Agency for International Development, USAID, for security, economic, and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine and allies on NATO's eastern flank. Of that funding, 2.75 billion would go toward humanitarian assistance to provide food and support for Ukrainians displaced by the conflict. So this isn't the first round of funding that Ukraine is likely to receive. The Biden administration is asking Congress to bake in this money for the upcoming appropriations bill, which they're likely to pass before March 11th. Cenk, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so look, there's so much propaganda out there. And so how do you know you could trust us if you're new to the show? Well, when we first announced sanctions, America did, against Russia when they first invaded, they were really weak. And if you watch this program, we told you they're super weak. In the beginning, they didn't even sanction Putin. It was absurd. And we were outraged by it. And they hadn't hit they hadn't cut off the banks yet, et cetera. But now they have. And so our job is to deliver facts to you guys. So now the sanctions, with the exception of the oil sanctions, are super strong. And the Russians are hurt very badly by it. The stock market closed, the ruble's down. Vladimir Putin appears to be in a panic, even yelling at people on TV. Nobody's ever seen that before. He never loses his cool when he's in public, but he has this time around. Now today he's out there going, oh no, everything is going according to schedule. Really? Because you were 17 miles outside of Kiev a couple of days ago, and now you're only 16 miles outside of Kiev. So you've gone 1 mile in a couple of days. I mean, they are definitely in trouble with that 40-mile convoy of tanks, which, by the way, a 40-mile convoy of tanks is a dumb idea to begin with. I'm not a military expert, but they're sitting ducks.
Yeah, totally.
Right? And they just realized Ukraine has drones. And so they're definitely in trouble. But when I see the 10 billion that we allocated, I do think, what percentage of that is just gonna secretly get to defense contractors? I mean, they're gonna get so rich off of this.
Yeah, no, I worry about that too.
Every dollar that goes
worry about that.
A huge percentage of every dollar that goes to the Pentagon gets skimmed off the top by defense contractors and doesn't go to help anyone, okay? And so both the lobbyists for defense contractors and the politicians who are bribed by defense contractors, probably the happiest people about this invasion. They're like,
totally.
oh, they're gonna make a killing, if you will.
I mean, look, the defense contractors had meetings with their investors and made it abundantly clear that there's a, money-making opportunity before them. This is before the Russian invasion. So that is definitely a concern. But look, I think that if you're making a promise to a country in order for them to give up their nuclear weapons, you have to fulfill the promise, right? So I'm glad to see that Biden's doing that. Biden also made promises to the American people, specifically the individuals who got out there and voted for him and gave him this position of power. And he hasn't fulfilled those promises. And I'm concerned about that too.
Yeah, so look, again, here's another way you can know that we're honest. And I have to tell you that because there's very few people in media that actually give you the facts. They usually go on one side or another, and they're more like lawyers and advocates than they are. While some pretend to be neutral, it's hilarious and absurd, right? But in this case, Biden has been a disaster in domestic policy, fulfilled almost none of his promises. But on foreign policy, I now think he's been near excellent. He's the only one who had the courage to withdraw from Afghanistan after 20 years. And now these sanctions are very tough and they're working. He's united the world, even gotten Switzerland and Monaco to be done with their neutrality in this case. Russia is hurt big time and has to be reconsidering their decision. The Russian assets are being seized all across the world. A $600 million yacht just got seized from an oligarch in Germany. And Biden has orchestrated this very strong response, delivering on his promises to the Ukrainians and others. So credit where credit is due. Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.